Go.
Hello everyone. Today my presentation topic is Neocolonialism and the Betrayal of Independence, Petals of Blood by Ngũgĩ. This is my academic information. This is the introductions. Ngũgĩ is a Marxist and anti-imperialist writer. Ngũgĩ is a renowned Marxist and anti-imperialist writer whose work critique capitalism, neocolonialism and the class operations in post-colonial Africa. His literature exposed the exploitations of the working class and the way in which African elites, in collaborations with Western powers, continue to uphold portrayed class struggles as a center to Kenya's political and economic realities, advocating for socialist revolutions as a means to achieve true liberations. His translations for writing in English to his narrative Gikuyu symbolize his rejections of colonial cultural dominance. Through novels like Petals of Blood and Devil on the Cross, he highlights the betrayal of independence as call of the grassroots resistance against imperialist exploitations. His works remains essential in understanding the intersections of literature, politicals and decolonizations in Africa. About the novel, published in 1977, Petals of Blood by Ngũgĩ offer a sharp critique of post-independence Kenya, highlighting the delusionments that follow the country's celebrations for colonial rules. Set in the rural village of Ilmor, the novel traces the lives of Munira, Abdullah, Banja and Karega, who express first-hand the shift from communal agrarian society on the dominant by capitalism and the exploitations. Ngũgĩ portrays how the new ruling elites, rather than fulfilling the promise of independence, perpetuated colonial era expressions of winding the gap between the rich and the poor through themes of economic injustice, corruptions and neocolonial control. The novel underscores how independence was compromised by internal and external forces that favored wealth and power over social progress. Petals of Blood remain potential works in post-colonial literature, exposing the harsh reality of betrayed revolutions and the continued operations in the post-colonial Africa. Ngũgĩ's Petals of Blood expose the betrayal of independence through neocolonialism exploitations. The novel critique how the Kenya's ruling elites, instead of fulfilling the promises of liberations, perpetuated capitalist operations, corruptions and inequalities mirroring the colonial system. By depicting the struggles of working class and transformations of Ilmor under neo-colonial forces, Ngũgĩ highlights the persistence of economics and social injustice. This presentation will explore how the novel challenges post-colonial delusionments and advocated for resistance against imperialist structures. What is the neocolonialism? Neocolonialism describes the ongoing economics, political and cultural influence that former colonial power exert our newly independent nations. Rather than using direct military or political control, dominant nations maintain power through economic dependency. Multinational corporations, friendlies and alliances with local elites, first introduced by Kwame Nkrumah. The terms criticized how post-colonial states continue to face exploitations through debate, resource extractions and unequal trades arguments, limiting their true independence. Scholars argue that neoliberal policies reinforce this imbalance, benefiting powerful Western economics, while winding economics disparities in the developing nations. In literature, writers like Ngũgĩ reveal how post-independence governments uphold colonial era economic structure, ultimately betraying the aspirations of freedom and equalities. Key aspects of the neocolonialism: economic dependency. on the Western power through debate, foreign investment, and unfair trade policies. Elite collaborations, local elites alliance with foreign interest, sustaining system of exploitations and wealth inequalities. Exploitations of the poor, resources and labor from developing nations are extracted for global profits and depending poverty. This is the quote from related post-colonialism. Neocolonialism in the Petals of Blood, promise of independence was reality of exploitations. Post-independence, many nation anti-separated sovereignty and prosperity. However, the persistence of neocolonialism practices often lead to continued exploitations. Many fisheries and politician, businessmen and the foreign investor, local political elites and businessmen frequently collaborate with foreign investor, facilitating the extraction of resource and the wealth. These elements of the prioritize personal and foreign interest, our national development, perpetuating economic disparities. Suffer working class, peasants and the freedom fighters. The working class and peasants bore the brunt of this exploitative system, facing a land dispossessions, poor working conditions and limited economic opportunities. Despite their efforts, freedom fighters often saw their vision of equitable societies remained by interested neocolonial structure. For a deeper understanding, consider exploring the concept of colonial experience and post-colonial underdevelopment in Africa and its impact on global economic disparities. Ilmor, a symbol of post-colonial Kenya. Ilmor, the shift from an isolated rural village to a commercialized town, symbolized how economic and political elites, in collaboration with foreign interests and perpetuated colonial structure under the use of progress. The increasing gap between the wealthy and the work class reflected Thiong'o's Marxist critique of the betrayal of independence, and where power remained concentrated among a privileged few, leaving a majority in continued poverty and oppressions. In Thiong'o's Petals of Blood, the transformations of Ilmor from a schedule of self-reliant village to a modernized town serves as a pipeline allegory for Kenya's post-independence journey. Initially, Ilmor epitomized traditional Kenya life with its residents deeply connected to their land and the communal practices. However, the inclusion of capitalist ventures and infrastructural developments leads to significant socio-economic upheaval, including land dispossessions and the erosions of indigenous culture values. This narrative mirrors the broader national experience of Kenya, where the promise of independence was overshadowed by neocolonial dominance and the internal class stratification. Betrayal, the political elites, former freedom fighter turned exploiter, Kimeria, Chui and Misiko, once part of the independence struggles, now collaborated with the oppressive system. They exploited common people for a personal gain, eliciting with foreign investors and the corrupt politicians. Murira dilemmas, a school teacher who witnessed corruptions and exploitations but struggled to take division actions, turned between moral responsibility and personal helplessness. Government's rule in operation engaged in the land grab, pushing peasants into the deeper poverty, prioritize foreign investments while neglecting local needs, continues colonial era structures of inequalities under a new ruling class. Economic exploitations and capitalism, foreign corporations and the new colonizers, Western business extract Kenya's resources, continuing economic exploitations, multinational companies, and support by corrupt local elites prioritize foreign profits over local welfare. Reflecting Ngũgĩ critique of neocolonialism, where independence is undermined by economic control, labor exploitations, and no true freedom. Workers face the same oppressions as under colonial rules: low wages, harsh conditions, and no rates. Industries controlled by elites like the Chui and Mexico perpetuated inequalities, symbolized through characters like Karega, who fight for workers' rights. Same operations and new rules. Ngũgĩ highlights how the post-independence governments serves the interest of the wealthy. The dream of liberation is the betrayal as a power shift from colonial rules to corruption African elites. Echoes Franz Fanon's ideas in The Virtues of Earth. Colonial structure remained intact, only the phases in power changes. Vanja story gender neocolonialism. Symbols of movement, oppression, economics, hardship, and survival. Vanja is forced into the prostitution due to a lack of economic opportunities. Exploitations of female labor and body. Women in Petals of bloods are subjected to both economic and sexual expectations, patriarchy, and the power imbalance. Despite her resilience, Vanja is constantly undermined by the male-dominant structure. Post-colonials' failure to liberate marginalized groups. Continuity of operations. Colonial rurals are placed by corrupt post-independence elites who exploiting the lower classes. Neocolonialism, capitalism, economic structure continue to favor the powerful for forcing marginalized group into the disparate survival strategies. Gender impact of neocolonialism. Women face a double burden, both economic marginalization and the patriarchy subjection. Vanja is a figure of resistance. Entrepreneurial spirits. Her initial attempt at running a business show agency despite systematic oppression. Defining stereotypes. Vanja's character challenge a simplistic portrayal of women as a possessive victims. Symbol of survival and strength. Despite her suffering, she remained a strong and influential figure in the novel. Resistance and hope. Karega's activism pushed for workers' rights and social ideals, championing the working class, advocated for fair wages and labor rights, resisting exploitations, exposed the corruption of post-independence elites who continued colonial era oppression. Critique of capitalism and neocolonialism. These economic structure favor the elites and perpetuated inequalities. Advocated for socialist revolutions as the means to true economic justice. Struggle against political repressions. Face persecution for his radical views on and involvement in worker movements. His resistance represents Ngũgĩ critique of the authoritarian regimes in post-colonial Africa. Ngũgĩ measures collective struggles as the only path to true independence. Failure to political independence without economic liberations. Ngũgĩ argued that gaining independence without dismantling exploiting economic structure is the mentless. This is the rule of education in revolutions and unity among the oppressors. Conclusion. Post-independence Kenya in the Petals of Blood mirror colonial rules as exploitations persist under a new class of elites who replace foreign oppressors but continue similar system to control. Neocolonialism extend beyond politics, deeply entrenching economics and social inequalities that marginalize the working class and women, as seen through characters like Vanja and the Karega. Ngũgĩ critiqued these illusions of independence and emphasizing that true liberation requires dismantling his oppressive structure. Through his novel, he calls for a collective resistance against systematic oppressions, advocating for a socialist ideal is the only path of genuine freedom and justice. This is my references. Thank you.